Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I am your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart, the Grumpster himself from CLP Audio and Staging. Today's topic is going to be power distribution, and we're going to talk about power in all forms. I had a follower ask me to talk about how I run power when I'm not using the distros, and how I run power with the distros and what distros I use and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to cover all that stuff today and going to kind of let you into our sick, twisted little world of power distribution. So stick around. You do not want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, if I could just have a moment of your time to talk to you about this channel. 49.8% of you guys watching this right now is not subscribed to this channel. Will you please hit that subscription button? It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel on the public side here. And then that gives us tools and resources and for my marketing team to be able to do what we need to do to get this content out to people who really enjoy this sort of thing. The other thing is, if you're super digging this and you'd like a deeper look into my world, then subscribe to the paid side of the YouTube channel. You can join for about the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you know, and then I do vlogs over there. I post content that never goes public, and I let you into my world. I let you into the CLP audio world, and I let you see what our day-to-day life looks like. Love you guys. Thank you for the support. Hello and welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So, so power distribution. Let me just dive right in there for all you guys that are always complaining that I jibber jabber too much and just don't get to the point. So let's start off with power distribution. If I show up at a club, or I'm at a venue, or if I'm doing a street festival on a generator, then here's how I negotiate all that. This right behind me is a distro I built myself. It is wired with all 10-2, 10 gauge wiring. It has 1, 2, 3, 30 amp, circuits, and then 1, 2, 3, 20 amp circuits, with there being 4 outputs on those last two 20s. So what this allows me to do, and the reason I set it up this way, is I typically only run 2 pair of subs, but I have the ability, I could run 4 pair of subs if I wanted to, but I don't really have events that big. But if I wanted to run 3 pair of subs, I had 3 30 amps there to kind of help get us there. They're single pole breakers. This is a great tool. I used to have 2 L1430s that came out of here that was going into another box, but I kind of changed things around, so I pulled those out. So this is just nothing. That's just the remaining holes that were there. It comes in 50 amp twist lock, like a California plug. On the other side is the breaker box itself. You can kind of see we got 6 circuits going on there. Everything is 10 gauge, and all the circuits are new. This is typically in a club situation. This is typically the feeder cable that I use. I have a 50-foot that has a like a NEMA 1450 range plug on one end, because that's what we find most in clubs and dock bars and at like city park pavilions, and things like that when we're doing summer concert series stuff. And then a twist lock 50 on the other side to go into here. So that's how that works when I have 50 amps at the club or whatever. Now, when I come rolling up into a festival setting, let's say that we're on a generator. First of all, let me say this, because I see a lot of guys that absolutely miss this point. usually I have the stage with me when I'm in that scenario. Even if I don't and I'm just bringing a generator, I always bring a ground rod. You know, I have a 5-foot ground rod. I usually pound it into the ground about 3 feet. You know, that's enough, you know, and then hook that to the chassis of the generator so the generator's grounded and we have a secure ground. And then I also ground the stage when I have the stage out. That's why I was bringing the stage up into that, because I carry 2 of those in the stage. But I could pull one at any time to be able to throw it in a truck to do a non-stage event with a generator. In that scenario, most generators will have 3 legs because they'll run 3-phase. I usually just run it in single phase and come out with 2 50s. They'll come out twist lock, Cali plug. From that, I have another feeder box, a big feeder box in the box truck. And I have 2 50s and then a jumper. In that scenario, I will run 1 leg to this box that will live in the truck with the amp rack and the control rack. And I will only run audio through this box because I know it's the best built and most secure. But over here, we have what you would usually see like on a construction site or something. It's kind of like a spider breakout box. I think it has, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it has like, I don't know, 6 or 8, you know, circuits on it. If we spin it around, here's where all the breakers are. So yeah, we have 6 circuits and then a 30 amp 240 that you can come out of here if you wanted to, which is kind of similar to what comes out of a generator or whatever. But I have 2 of these in the box truck, and those work fine for lighting and stage power. Typically, I'll take the second 50 amp leg off the generator and I'll run into one of these. This has an in and out on each box. This is just a box that lives here at the shop for me to hook up into my 240 into the wall if I need to test out gear or something like that. I mean, I have some 110s around the shop too, but sometimes I'm trying to blow out a system and I need a little more power. So I just have kind of built this one for, you know, for here at the shop. The 2 that I have in the truck are actually a little newer and in a little bit better shape than that, although that's not in bad shape at all. And they're also red, you know, so they hide a little better under the stage. So I'll run into the first box and then daisy chain from that box to the second box. And it gives me 12 circuits on a 50 amp leg to supply electricity for the stage. So all the back line, all my lighting is LED, so it's not that labor intensive, you know, that way. I usually put 3 circuits in the ceiling of the stage, 1 for upstage wash, 1 for center stage movers, which there's 2 bars of that up and down center stage, and then downstage wash. So 3 circuits up in the lights is more than enough. And then I drop a circuit on each corner of the stage. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm running like 7 circuits on stage. And they all come out of these type spider boxes. That works pretty well. The cool thing about this is you can buy these things on eBay or like even Facebook Marketplace for about, you know, $200 or $300, you know, something like that. I think I gave $250 for this one, and it had a couple little issues with the GFIs. I took the GFCIs out of it and upgraded the wiring in it, put a little heavier wiring in it and that sort of thing. And it's just fabulous for here at the shop. The other 2 that I carry in the truck are pretty stock. They still have the GFCIs in them, and they work great. You know, the only thing about them is some of those things are designed in a manner to where when you first plug your power into it, you got to reset all the GFCIs, and then all the circuits are live at that point, you know. Some of them don't. I don't think mine are like that. I think mine are good to go as soon as you plug in the twist lock. But I always make the guys, you know, check all that. The other thing is too, like I keep a tester, and let me back up over here so you can see this again. I keep a tester plugged into this one. It's just a little plain Jane $6 tester. It will light up double yellow, just letting me know that I have power to that distro and that it's correct before I plug anything in. And then I use this tester. This actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see this on video. Let's see. See, oh yeah, there we go. You see how it has numbers in there? So I can plug it into the wall and it will tell me, red is bad and there's an issue, and it will read that out here telling me what the issue is. Green means we're good to go, and then this will tell me how many volts we're actually getting out of the wall. Or out of whatever we're plugging it into. I usually keep this in the drawer of the control rack because we use that thing a lot. I also have one in my front of house bag. I try to keep them around. I think that thing was like 12 bucks. It's a Cool Tools unit. I think it was 12 or 15 bucks on Amazon. Buy 2 or 3 of them and sprinkle them around your system. When I go into a new club that I've never been in before, the first thing I do is go around the room, check all the circuits with that tester to see how many volts I have at each circuit, to see we don't have an open ground or open neutral. A lot of times we find those things, especially in dock bars and stuff, clubs that have kind of been like built onto and built onto and built onto, and the wiring kind of gets hairy when you do that sort of thing. Yeah. So that little $12, $15 tester will tell you everything you need to know. Sometimes I'll plug it into one of the power conditioners in the front of the control rack and just leave it there all day. So I know what's hitting that rack. Even though I have a power conditioner that tells me what it is, I kind of compare. Sometimes I don't know. I'm anal retentive that way and want to maybe see it in both places. Or I'll plug it into one of the triple taps, which that is something else I wanted to show you. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm back. So I wanted to show you this. This is the type of extension cord that I use. This is a 50-foot, and it's a triple tap, which means it has 3 Edisons in it. And this has a little LED in it that lights up to let you know that there's power present. Man, when I was on the road doing pro touring stuff, we carried these big heavy gauge, 10 gauge cables that we made in the warehouse that had a big metal quad box on it, about like so, with 4 Edisons in it. And those things were always a bear to wrap up. The box is always in the way. It catches on everything when you're pulling it across the floor, trying to under your cables. All these cables that I just showed you here, and I have 3 systems full of AC cables, extension cords and stuff. I always buy them in black. It doesn't cost any more to get them in black. I just think it looks better. They're all 12 gauge. Unless you're running more than 20 amps, you really don't need more than 12 gauge. 10 gauge is all fine and good if you're running 30 amp runs, or something like that or whatever. But I don't have anything that's drawing more than about 15 or 17 amps at any given time. And that's really my sub amps when I'm just hammering them, And I don't very often hammer my subs like that. I'm very cautious and gentle with my equipment. I try to overshoot my systems in a way to where I'm never using more than about 60 or 65% of throttle, because it gives you a lot of fidelity that way. Amps and everything, the drivers will all run cooler that way, so you're not having thermal issues. It draws more consistently and evenly from the wall that way. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to show you that little trick. I get these, man, I think I got these clear end triple taps. I think I got them from Amazon. I mean, you got to get, a half decent brand. eBay, I've gotten a ton of them off of eBay, They're already pre-made, so I'm not stuck here in the shop for 3 days making extension cords out of big, heavy 10 gauge wiring. 10 gauge is great, like I said, if you're doing 30 amp or something, but I've been using 12 gauge for, man, probably 15 years, something like that, 10 years at least, 12 years. And I've never once had a situation where it wasn't heavy enough to provide power in an efficient manner. And having that triple tap, yeah, it's 3 Edisons instead of 4, but because they're tapered, like look at it again, because it's tapered like a V, when you're pulling on it and you're trying to wrap it up, it tends to find its way around things a lot better. It doesn't get hung up on every little teeny tiny thing you're trying to do. And I have those in 25, I think my A-Rig has 6 or 8 25s, 5 50s, and 4 100-foot. with triple taps. So that's kind of what works with me. We're trying to cover all things power here today. That's how I get power around the stage and how I get power from the distro to, to the stage or to the light rig or whatever. I have a bunch of these, 12 gauge in my light rig AC boxes. I have a separate box for extension cords just for the light rig. So now let's talk about actually powering the amps. As you can see, let me move the camera here a little bit. I got a rack full of amps. This rack was originally subs and monitors for my 850 rig. The 850 rig is a 4-way rig, passive rig. So I had another rack this same size with a processor in it that just did high, mid, low. And then I have an analog crossover in the bottom of this right here with a cover over it for aux sub. And I have that crossed over at like 65, 70, somewhere in that ballpark. So this was to run 4 pair of subs, and then you have 8, possible wedge monitor, channels of power here. These are cheaper Chinese amps for monitors. I'm not putting a bunch of money in monitor power these days because 60% of my clients are in-ear monitors now. So, I mean, I'm not blowing a bunch of money in it. I would never use those amps on front of house these days. I have in a pinch. It's nice to have this stuff. That Admark amp is new. It just got it last year. And it's like, I don't know, it's like 7,000 watts per channel at 4 ohms. I think it's 7,200 at 4 ohms for 4 channels. Now, I think they're lying through their freaking teeth with those numbers. But if it's giving me 2,500 watts or even 3,000 watts, if it's giving me half of what it says it does, it's still worth the $1,500 that I paid for the amp brand new. And this model, Admark, if you don't know anything about Admark is the Chinese company. Apparently, now don't take me to the bank on this because someone will jump up in my comments and crucify me and be calling lawyers on me and stuff saying this ain't the case. But from all the research I did online, I have discovered that Admark is the mother company that makes processors for a lot of the PowerSoft stuff. So PowerSoft's coming out of one side of the factory and Admark's coming out of the other is how it was explained to me. If that's not the case, I digress. I'm sorry. I apologize to PowerSoft. I'm not saying it's a PowerSoft amp. If that was a PowerSoft amp saying 7,200 per channel, I would take that to the bank, okay? But because it's a Chinese company who seems to be fairly reputable, I'm happy if it's half of what they're saying it is, because all I needed to do is to power some monitor wedges. I'm not taking over the world with that thing. The other one is a 4-channel clone of a very popular brand you probably know without me even telling you. And I've had that. I think I paid $450 for that amp like 10 years ago or something from China. And it's I mean, knock on wood, it's working. It's been great for monitors. No one ever complains about monitor power. The Admark seems to match that amp really well in power. So one isn't like super strong and the other one's weaker. They both seem to be putting out about the same amount of power, which kind of aligns with, the numbers game that we were just discussing. But it's a great backup amp. If one of the crowns go down, I run all the crowns on front of house. Now, I told you what this rack originally was. Now what it is these days, and what I find it doing mostly these days, is just being my club, community concert rig. So I just run 1 amp. These 2 are subs, and these 2 are set up. One's set up for tops, one is a spare. When I'm running the double stack out 850 rig, or I'm sorry, the SRX rig, they're just kind of daisy chained together. I try to keep things at 4 ohms on the 722s, the SRX 722s. But most of the time, these things live with just the bottom amp running and this amp here running on top, sub and top. They're 5,000 watts, macro I. It's basically an iTech without the DSP. And man, they just kill. They absolutely kill. I love them. The power's nice and fat and warm. It really has added a lot of fidelity to what we do. Now, I bring all that up to say this, because you're saying, Gerald, what's this got to do with power? I'm trying to lay a foundation here, people. Work with me. I see so many people running these kind of amps into a $89 power conditioner in their rack that is controlled by a little Chinese 15 amp thumb reset circuit breaker. And then they wonder why they're burning amps up, or they wonder why they're browning out in a lot of cases. And I mean, I'll see them run like a whole rack of amps in one power conditioner. I had a conversation with the service department of Crown not long ago. I had an install client who had an XTI that was having some issues. They had a power surge and blew something up and had an issue with it. And I was just kind of talking to the service rep from Crown about just general powering stuff or whatever. And I already kind of knew this. I just wanted to see if he would confirm what I've always known to believe and what I was taught about powering up power amps. And he said to never plug their amps into a power strip. Even if it's a $800 NASA engineered with alien technology and can take you back in time to, you know, have a second shot at the one that got away, you know, from high school. You know what I mean? He said, don't run our amps through power strips. Plug them directly into the wall. The amps have technology built into them to protect them, you know, from, you know, most of the things that are going to happen as far as faulty power, open ground, open neutral. Obviously, if you, like my client, because I'm bringing up this, like, okay, well, I'm talking to you about an XTI that blew up because of a power surge. And he said, well, what happened in the venue? And I said, well, a transformer on the pole outside of the venue failed, blew up or whatever, and sent, like, it burned up everything in the club, all the computers, all the TVs. I mean, it was their air conditioning system, it blew everything up. He said in that scenario, he says even a power conditioner is not going to, you know, it's not, even if you trip that 15 amp circuit, if it's that much voltage coming through, it's just going to jump the circuit and everything's going to fry anyways. That made sense because a lot of the things that was in that nightclub that had that problem was on power conditioners, on the same little 15 amp type power conditioners, some of them in install racks and stuff like that. It burned everything up, even though the power conditioners were in place. He said, in that rare case, nothing's going to save you. He said, but come on, dude, how many times have you seen that in your 35 years in the business? And I'm like, well, just once in this scenario. I was at a church one time, a multi-level church that had an elevator, whose elevator blew up because of the same thing happening. A power transformer on a pole blew up, and I guess it was only feeding the elevator. Maybe the elevator, I don't know anything about elevators, so maybe the elevators take a lot more power than everything else in the building, and it was on its own leg. But that was the only thing that got hurt in the scenario. So they had to, rebuild the electronics in their elevator to make that work again. Other than that, I've never seen anything weird like that happen. Now, I had a situation many, many years ago when we used to go into clubs and power up stuff. Somebody showed me what was a 3-prong 50 amp 240 is what I was told. And I plugged it up and went to the distro and plugged it up, and it tripped the circuits on the distro. And then come to find out, it was an old style industrial type connection called a high leg, which instead of two 120 or 110 lines, it had one 120 and one 240. And they used to use that in industrial situations. This bar we were in at one time was, I think, a meat processing plant. So I'm assuming they may have had some kind of high leg meat carver or some kind of piece of equipment there. So I did see a situation like that. But before I could even go and test it, I should have got out my multimeter and checked the plug itself before I plugged into it. So really, I was at fault at that. Thankfully, the circuits in the distro saved our rear end and it tripped everything, and it was all fine and good. We ended up just using other power that night and getting through the night. But I plug everything into the wall. All these amps go directly into either a triple tap cable that's going directly into the wall, or when I'm using this distro, what I typically do is set it on its side right next to the amp rack and turn it around so that all the outlets are facing the back, and I plug everything out of the back right into the distro so that there's no cables, and we're getting power as efficiently as you can possibly want at that stage of the game. So yeah, so that's kind of how that works. I'm trying to think of what else I can talk to you about as far as power is concerned. I do run power conditioners in my control rack. I greatly recommend doing that. The M32 in DL goes through its own power conditioner by itself. And then I have another power conditioner at the top that the wireless mics go through. And then I have like some things like the Wi-Fi routing stuff and everything's plugged into that top power conditioner. I may reach back there and plug in, you know, a fan or something like that or whatever, especially with it being 115 million degrees like it's been here in the last few weeks or months or whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of what works with me. I carry this distro and that feeder cable with the club rig. It goes with me 99.9% of the time. Most of the time I don't have, here we go, here's something else we can talk about. I don't have a 240 in the club to deal with. Let me raise the camera up here just a little bit. So what I do is, here's the rule. When you go into a nightclub where you're just running off wall power, okay? First of all, use your $15 tester, test all the outlets in the room, make sure everything's copacetic. If it is, great. The rule is for each wall, it should be a separate circuit. That's how they wire these places, typically. Now, if you're in some, you know, goofy dock bar that's been built onto 1,000 times, God only knows what you're going to run into. They may still be running, you know, screw-in fuses or something in their system. I've seen some of that. It's insane, but yeah, you know, or 15 amp circuits instead of 20 amp circuits, you know, and things like that. You know, look at the voltage on your tester. If it says 110, you know, it's 110. If it says 120, well then you're 120, 118. I like to be in that 120 to 118, 115, somewhere in that ballpark. Audio will work all the way down to about 100, 105. 105 is probably as low as I've ever run audio on, but it will run on that. It won't like it, and you'll have brownout issues, but it will operate that way. Video, on the other hand, will not. So if you're using LED walls or anything like that, always make sure you have at least 115 to 120 volts for video. So if I walk into a room, obviously there's 3 walls around the stage. That should be 3 circuits. Most clubs, not all of them, because everybody has a horror story about power, most clubs will put at least 2 circuits on the downstage wall or the upstage wall on the back of the stage. So if that's the case, now you get 4 circuits, which is great. One rule that I live by and die by when it comes to club power is I always put the sub amp on its own circuit by itself. Even if I have to run everything else on another circuit, which sometimes happens, I always want the sub amp on its own individual circuit because it's the one piece of my equipment that's going to draw the most power the quickest. Because I do that, I rarely, it's probably been 10 years since I've tripped a circuit in a club. You know, now, as I mentioned before when we were talking about extension cords, I carry a lot of extension cords. So I'm not afraid to go 100 feet to get a clean circuit for stage power or whatever, you know, for backline. And then use all the stuff that's close for, you know, front of house power. And then maybe I'll run a 50-foot for monitor power, you know, or that sort of thing. You got to do what you got to do. You know, if you're smart and you run the cables along the wall and you do all the obvious stuff, you know, gaff them down every 2 feet or something or whatever, you know, along the wall, then that could really get you a long way and trying to make things work correctly in the nightclubs. Some of these clubs have, I know one club specifically that has one outlet, no matter what you plug into it, it has a ground hum in it. And the thing is when I check it with the tester, it tests okay. But everything I've ever plugged into that thing had a 60 hertz hum. So I know now, and it took a gig to figure that out, you know, I know now to just never use that. I don't put it on stage power, I don't put it on anything. You know, they have three other circuits on stage at that venue, and they have a 240. But I'm usually doing a walk-in in that venue, so it's not. I don't really need a whole bunch of power. I really only need one clean circuit to just fire up the control rack, because the bands I work with in that room are using split snakes, and they're running their own monitors from their own monitor mixer on stage. So I'm just sending left-right sub or just left-right in that situation to the house and mixing from that perspective. You know, and then when you're trying to navigate your way through this horrible power situation, it never fails. You know, the owner or the manager is going to look at you and say, "Hey, you're the sound guy. Figure it out." Even though it's their junk power, it's their junk equipment. You know, don't get me started. It's a whole thing. So typically, to repeat myself, it should be a separate circuit on each wall of the venue. You know, that should give you, at a bare minimum, 3 accessible circuits within probably 50 feet of the stage. So if you carry, you know, 250s and 425s, you could probably work most clubs. You know, make sure you're 12 gauge, put your sub amp, or if you're using active stuff, put your subs on one dedicated circuit, you know, and then your tops and your monitors on another circuit, you know, and then back line on another circuit, and bam, you're good to go. And then you can kind of put your wash lights up wherever you want them, except don't put them on the sub circuit, but you could put them on one of the other circuits, and it's probably not going to hurt anything. So that's just a rule of thumb that I live by. It's what I do. I don't like to share electricity with anything else when it comes to subs. I want subs on their own dedicated thing. So that's kind of how it works. I'm trying to think of what else we can talk about here. Feeder cable sucks balls. I just let you know that it's always heavy. I hate moving it. I usually make some of my younger staff deal with feeder cable. But yeah, and I think that stuff is, I don't know, you know, 6/4 cable or 4/4 cable, something like that or whatever. I'd have to, you know, look at the jacket to really tell you the truth. But I made all the, actually I bought the big feeder cable for the festival rig pre-made, and I did all the research and make sure that we're at the right gauge and all that and everything. It's safe to carry 50 amps. We're really, even with everything full bore, I say full bore, like if we're just doing business as usual at a street festival, stage sound and lighting, everything together, I'm still probably only drawing, you know, I don't know, 40 or 50 amps, 60 amps altogether. Now, when you say that, someone will say, well, why can't you just run everything off of 150 then? Well, because I want to be able to distribute the electricity as I need it. You know, that's why I have 30 amp circuits in this distro, so that I have a little bit of headroom. These 5000s, I think that at 1/8 power or 1/4 power, I think they're drawing like 17 amps. I think normally I'm around 8 to 12 amps, depending on how we're running the system. But I know in the generators that I rent, I usually rent, I guess that's the other thing we can talk about. I usually rent at least 36 to 45K generators. Now, you say to yourself immediately, you don't need a generator that big. And I will agree with you, you don't, okay? There's other reasons why I pick a generator like that. The first reason is the smaller, like 26, 28K generators get rented out a lot. I mean, go to your local rental place and look at the condition of the smaller, 26K generators and the 36 to 45K generators. The 36 to 45K generators are always look brand new. And the smaller ones look like they've been to hell and back, So it's a reliability thing for me. I rented it was actually a 36K 2 years ago and had it break down on me at a festival. And it took the rental company 8 hours, 6 hours to get out there to actually do anything with it. And the alternator on the generator went bad. That is the most insane thing in my mind, that a generator needs an alternator. But the alternator's on there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to run the digital brain that keeps all the safety protocol in place and all that kind of stuff. Well, when the battery went dead, the thing shut down because the brain does not have any electronic action going on with it. So what he did was he dumped a new battery in it. He didn't have a new alternator to replace it with. And that bought me about 75 minutes of generator toward the evening when I had to run the light rig. We ended up robbing generators off of some of the food vendors to actually get through the show. But yeah, we needed the generator when it was time to turn the lights on. So it bought us that. But typically, the bigger generators are in a lot better shape. There is less chance that they're going to puke on you. The other thing is they have a huge fuel tank on them. So I can fill up a 45K generator, 36K generator, and run it for 3 days for a 3-day festival. Could probably easily run the thing for a 5-day festival, but I've never needed it more than 3 days. So that means I'm not running out after diesel fuel, every night, to top off the generator. I fill it up when I take it to the event. And when I'm done at the event, I stop at the gas station on the way home, top it back off before I take it back to the rental center, and bam, we're good to go. That's why I use a bigger generator, I could easily get away with a 26K. I actually have a 26K gas generator here in the shop that I've used many, many times during street festivals with just basic lighting. I actually used it one time. Yeah, actually, because it has 250s out on it. I actually used it one time for a festival where it was all inclusive. Lights, movers, the whole 9 yards, stage, everything. And it worked just fine. But then we had some kind of issue with the fuel system in it. It dumped a bunch of fuel down the cylinders. And I got busy and just parked it back here in the shop and haven't gotten back to it. It tried to vapor lock on us, I'm pretty sure. So I need to pull the plugs out of it and go through it. I'm kind of a mechanic, so I come from a long family of mechanics. So yeah, I'm going to try to get that thing straightened out and put another carburetor on it or whatever it's going to take to get that thing back in action. But yeah, so that's, kind of my take on generators, they pull behind, they're usually tandem axle. So they pull behind the box truck real good. Don't have any issues with it there. It's more than enough power. Sometimes I'll have the promoter park an RV close to it and he can plug into it as well. And that kind of gets him what he needs, and it serves a bunch of different purposes. He's paying for it anyways. I charge a set fee to go get the generator and then provide all the feeder and the breakout boxes and power distros. If the client wants to go get a generator, then that's on him, and they get to save that fee, And I have probably a 50-50 cut between guys that want to do it themselves and guys that are just like, dude, I want to write one check and just be done with this event. So in that case, we're happy to go get the generator, set up all that stuff and take it to and from the show and, keep stuff doing what it needs to do. So yeah, so there's that. So what else can we talk about with power? You guys hit me up in the comments section if I've missed something. And you want to ask me questions. We kind of touched on the fact that, why don't you just use 150 amp instead of 2? It's the same reason why like your house is wired up. You may have like a 200 amp servicing your house, but you may have 260 or 80 amps worth of breakers in your house. You're never going to use 260 amps at one time. But it gives you the ability to distribute power in an efficient manner in the way you want it to be distributed. I had a venue one time that had two 120 30 amp plugs on stage and was like, that should be more than enough to do everything you want to do. And I'm like, technically it is. And we were able to use that and be really nice to it and not have any issues, but it's not the preferred way that I want to run power, because I want to have more control over how I distribute the power than being stuck on just two 30 amp circuits. So, if I put a sub amp and a top amp on one circuit because I'm forced to, and then a monitor amp and all the stage gear and lighting on the other circuit, there's a possibility I could trip one of those circuits. To where if you just gave me 60 amps or even 50 amps and let me distribute it the way I see fit, then we'll get the most out of that outlet in the most efficient manner. I hope that makes sense to you guys. I know that's kind of a weird concept. I'm sure somebody's going to just blow me out of the water in the comment section and explain that way better than what I just did. But trust me, it works better that way. Okay, it just does. I got 35 years of success to back it up. It just works better that way. So yeah, so that's that's kind of it. That's the deal. Let me book in the video if I can by asking you to please subscribe to the channel. 48% of you guys that are watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. Subscribe to the channel. If you really dig my content and you really dig what I'm trying to do here, because I'm genuinely trying to be different than all the other sound guys on YouTube. That's why I don't do a whole bunch of gear reviews and stuff like that, even though you guys ask for that sort of thing. Man, if you watch 10 different gear reviews, you get 10 different opinions. So if you don't believe me, start a conversation about microphones with a circle of sound engineers. Every one of them is going to tell you that their mics are better than the guy standing next to them, and he's an idiot for not thinking so. I don't entertain that stuff. Really, the point of my content is to teach you how to do what you do with the absolute most return on investment, get the most bang for your buck, and to do it in a safe and efficient manner. I'm all about keeping things simple and not overcomplicating everything. So many guys I see on here are they're flying in waves racks and they're doing all that. And like the average middle market, middle of the road sound guy who works for the government during the week, and this is his hobby on the weekend, isn't worried about all that stuff. He's just trying to go out and have fun. He needs a system that's easy to deploy, that has an efficient workflow. And man, those are the guys that I'm trying to talk to. I'm not trying to talk to the pro touring guys. I'm not trying to talk to the guys who feel like they need to be the smartest guy in the room all the time. No, I'm talking to the guys that are humble and genuinely just want to learn how to do what they do better. If you see that in my content and you're recognizing my heart and what I'm trying to do, please consider becoming a paid member of the channel. I mean, for the price of a Starbucks cup of coffee a month, you get to be insider stuff. I do an insider video, long form video every week. I'm getting ready to record it right after this video. It only goes to members and it will never become public. That's just the way it works, Plus, if you need some advice on something or you need a hand with something, what you're trying to do, if you're a paid member and you communicate that to me, I try to bend over backwards to help you out. I try to legitimately say, look, here's some gear that I would recommend, or here's how I would handle that situation and that sort of thing. I specifically try to set aside time for the paid members on all my platforms before anybody else. Before I go acknowledging or replying to anybody else's comments, the paid members always get first dibs, So if that makes sense to you and, $5 or $6 a month isn't going to kill you, it could be pretty cool. You can cancel at any time. I'm not going to be mad at you. I won't, go, poop in a bag and set it on fire on your front porch or anything. You're free to come and go whenever you want. It's not the airport. You don't have to announce your departure. It's all good. I know that what I do is not for everyone. Sometimes I feel like I'm a bumbling idiot on here, okay? Let's just be honest. It's uncomfortable to see yourself on camera and on video all the time. But there's so many of you guys that really appreciate what I'm doing here that it just keeps me going, and it keeps me doing the things that you guys are asking me to do, talk about the subjects you want me to talk about, because there's so much about being successful in this business that has nothing to do with all the technical aspects. There's a million other channels that you can go follow that will teach you all of the technical aspects of it. Some of them need to stop teaching because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Most of them are in the ballpark and can help you get from point A to point B. Yeah, I don't really think you need that. I think you need someone who's had their feet in the trenches for 35 years and can tell you how to navigate problem clients and, the gear that has the best ROI and, things like that. I think that's the information you really need. And I think that's what the internet lacks most, is people just coming from a blue collar, gut level, position, trying to give you information that you can actually use, you can put in your pipe and smoke, that the juice truly is worth the squeeze. I love you guys. Thank you for your support. Even if you haven't subscribed, I still appreciate your support. I appreciate you viewing, especially if you made it this far in the video. I mean, really, most guys are out at like 10 minutes, Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. I'll see you next time.